Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Post Political Podcast. I'm the host, Derek Britton, and I'm excited for everyone to join us tonight. So we have, like I said, we're wrapping up season one of the show. This is the second to last episode of season one. I'm very excited for our guests today. Next week, check us out as well. We are going to be talking to Erin Hamlin, the Executive Director of Center for Election Science, about approval voting and the St. Louis using approval voting for one of their elections and how that went and how that influenced the election. So that'll be pretty interesting. That's the last episode of season one. We're going to take a summer break, come back in late August, early September, and we're going to be coming back with some new stuff and a bunch of really great guests that I'm already starting to book. So yeah, looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to tonight. I have our first Green Party candidate. I've had other folks from the Green Party on the show, but this is the first candidate I have from the Green Party. So I'm very excited about that. First up, let's hit the different promos. So first off, we have the Vermin Supreme Institute. Our purpose is to inspire social evolution through the disruption of authoritarianism, to promote compassionate activism, and to spread the knowledge of redacted history. Through the use of humor, direct action, and mutual aid, we uplift the disaffected, the disenfranchised, and the disempowered. And finally, the Love in Action fundraiser, very successful. Thanks to everyone who donated. 75 unhomed individuals were able to get these winter survival gear packs. And then we handed out the rest actually at the Fallon Soup Kitchen. So thank you to everyone who helped out with that. I really appreciate it. And speaking of places you can help, we have two promos going on. First up, we have the Trans Resource Network of Louisiana. And I are doing a joint promo. This is running till the end of season one, so we only have a couple weeks left to get the Be Gay, Do Crime merchandise. If you do not want the merchandise and you want to just directly donate, there's the PayPal link right there. The Trans Resource Network of Louisiana is committed to helping trans and gender nonconforming folks in the New Orleans area. And then lastly, we have the Bridge Kids Give Back fundraiser. So Bridge Kids Give Back is committed to feeding, clothing, and uplifting one unhoused community at a time. They're working in kind of the Eastern Massachusetts area, and they're looking to expand. So check them out and also go to either my shop or go to paypal.me/BridgeKidsGiveBack to donate directly to the Bridge Kids Give Back group. All righty. And now we have Destiny Clayton. So Destiny is a Green Party candidate running for governor of Michigan. We will be discussing the campaign where we can collaborate on different topics such as criminal justice reform, drug decriminalization, and sex work. So let's bring in Destiny. How's it going?
Great. How are you?
Good. I'm super happy to have you on. This is, like I said, the first time I've had a Green Party candidate coming in. So when is your election for the governor of Michigan?
It is at the end of 2022. So we actually have a pretty long run, and it's purposely done like that to give us some extra time.
Absolutely. I think one of the big things, even on some of the national races I've seen, is people not being able to know about the candidates a little earlier. We don't have, with third parties, we don't have the money to push ads right off the bat and all these different things all over the TV and internet. So it takes a little bit of time for us to get our names out, and I'm glad you're starting early. I know a lot of libertarian folks starting early on this side as well. So I'm very happy to see that.
We are in the Green Party right now. We're trying to encourage almost all of our candidates to get a really good early start this season. And we're going to be working really hard throughout the summer. We have a lot of plans, and we got a lot of exciting things coming up. So it's a great day to be green, I think.
That's great. No, and I'm super happy. We talked a little bit in the pre-show about seeing more third-party candidates running and supporting each other and stuff. I want to actually start off by kind of asking you how you got to the third-party world. I know everyone kind of has their own path to get here, and I want to know what your story is. So,
my path is a long and strange one, but I was homeless at 16, and I joined the Army at 18. I grew up really right-wing and Republican, and the Army definitely reinforced that for a little while. I got introduced to the other side and really opened my eyes to some social issues with Bernie. Yep. Bernie opened my eyes in 2016, and I started getting involved. I did a lot of work on his campaign in 2016, And then I did a lot of work again in 2020. And when I watched him get screwed over the second time, I got very angry, and I said I was done with this, because that party is obviously owned by the corporations, and they're not going to let someone who's actually going to help us win. So I wanted to go with a party that wasn't corrupt, and so I found the Green Party, and I'm very happy to work with all of the people there.
Yeah, that's great. And I've met a ton of Green Party folks. Very happy. I call most of them friends. They're a very good group. I wholeheartedly. So I said this on many of the shows. You know, if I'm going down the list and voting for candidates, and obviously I've done some homework and try to find Libertarian Party candidates, because that's typically where I vote. But if there is no Libertarian Party candidate, and there's a green rainbow is what it's here in Massachusetts, I vote for that every single time. I think. Supporting third parties is by far, and so many, and I think we're going to dive a little deeper. In so many ways, we agree on so many things that it's foolish to go with one of the two parties that we know have been screwing us over for 100+ years to continue down that path when we have alternative paths really available. So
exactly, it's crazy to keep trying to think that they're going to change anything. So. Right. No, and that's a big argument back and forth, just so they can pretend it's the other guy's fault that you were broke. But
yeah, and
it's all of their fault.
We talk about it a ton in different circles and stuff of just having different conversations about kind of the duopoly and stuff. And it's you see these issues that they grandstand on. And some of them are very easily fixed. I mean, we just saw Biden write 50 executive orders. He could have decriminalized marijuana in one of those. He could have opened up the borders and allowed for free immigration. He could have done many things that supposedly he stands for and they grandstand on. But in the end of the day, if they solve those problems, they would no longer have those positions to grandstand upon. So.
Yep. They wouldn't be able to say, well, you're going to be oppressed by the Republicans if you don't vote for us. But they're not solving the oppression.
Exactly. Yeah, and we talked about it. Criminal justice is a place that we agree on. We talked about it a little bit in the intro, and we talked about it in some of the pre-meeting. Having one officer go to jail for wrongfully murdering someone in the street on live camera is not justice. It's not fixing the system. It's not doing anything.
It's literally the bare minimum that should have occurred. Like, it's not this huge win. This should have just been like, oh yeah, he's going to go to jail. That should just be normal. What shouldn't be normal is that it was even close to being an argument of whether or not it was okay.
Right. And then for other folks to have died in the same day due to police over stepping their bounds and literally killing people. I mean, it's happened far more frequently than even the news. I mean, the news picks out, the stories where you see videos and things like that for sure. But there are hundreds of people who never get their day to fight the injustice of being murdered or being sexually assaulted. There's awful stories of police officers, and with qualified immunity, you can't really do much for repercussions.
And it's scary too, because they're in these very powerful positions, and women are going to give up a little bit easier to them, or not necessarily fight as much. I don't know. It's really gross, the things that I've seen come out of the police departments, and it's easily solved. All of those things are easily solved just by putting in rules and then sticking to them and actually firing officers who violate the rules, instead of, I don't know, hiding it and then hiring them in a different county. It's strange to me.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been a lot of kind of support to end qualified immunity across the country, and you're seeing different cities and states kind of take up the cause. I know in New York, after it was voted on, there was a memo that was kind of leaked to the press, and it said I think it was from the police, and I might be completely butchering this, but I think this is what it was. It was from the police chief to the rest of the police force, basically saying, hey, we need to actually follow the rules because now we can be sued for not following the rules. And it's like, how eye-opening is that even just that small of a first step that really is an incremental step to where we end up needing to be does so much in just making sure that people are being held accountable for the actions that they do, the wrongful actions they do.
Yeah, and that's all it comes down to, is that police know that they're not the ones that are bad apples, the ones that are doing the right things. They know they're never going to be held accountable for their actions. Right. They know it because they've already committed these actions over and over and over again, and they're going to continue to get away with them. You know, I'm very sure that wasn't the first person he assaulted. I'm very sure George Floyd was not the first person he ever overstepped his bounds on. You know.
Yeah, I think he had 8 former complaints or something like that before the murder of George Floyd.
Yeah, so they just, it's just, they're going to get more and more confident that they can do whatever they want because there is no accountability.
Right.
And that's a very easy solution, by making sure there's accountability.
Yeah, and I mean, police unions have been fighting it very, very. I mean, I've seen, Massachusetts had defund the police. Actually, some legislation make it to the state house, and it hasn't even seen the light of day. I don't even know if it's been read on the floor because the police union has fought it so hard. They parked defend the police trucks in front of the voting locations on November 3rd or whatever last year. It was. There was a lot of money behind stopping these movements from actually doing what they need to in the state capitals.
And that's, that's what usually happens. It's a lot of money on the other side. And that's the only reason that we don't get these issues fixed. There's corporations or whatnot, in almost every situation that has an advantage there. They don't want our criminal justice system fixed. That means they lose slaves. It means they lose a lot of power. So it's not necessarily their biggest, priority.
Right. And you look at the statistics, and it very well should be. I mean, it should be the number one thing. And it has obviously been part of what the media has covered over the last couple of years, because there has been some, major news stories or whatever that they can cover, but it should have been a major news story long ago. I mean, we have 22% of the world's incarcerated population, and we have something like 5% of the population, the world's population. It's just, it's staggering to see those kind of numbers in a supposedly very free country. You know what I mean? It's just,
we're the freest country, but we have the most people locked up.
Yeah.
But, and it's not even just that we have them locked up, it's how we have them locked up. We put enough money into our criminal justice system that there's no reason that people should live in fear when they're in jail. It should be a safe place to be.
Right.
But instead, it's a place that actually creates more crime. You go to jail for one thing, you're likely to end up back in there just from the traumas and everything else that you're going to receive while you're in prison.
Yeah.
It's astronomical to me that we have a criminal justice system that actually creates criminals and doesn't solve it. That's stupid. So
right. And I mean, more laws every day get put on the books you look at some of the wrongful deaths that have happened, the murders that have happened over the past couple of years. One of the reasons someone was stopped because they had an air freshener hanging from the mirror. Smell of cannabis, these victimless crimes that literally harm no people. People are being put in jail for.
Yeah, I was going to say, most people that are in jail, I think a large percent of them is normally poverty reasons.
Yep.
Like they weren't able to pay a ticket, got their license suspended, and then we're driving on a suspended license, and then, couldn't pay that ticket, and then they end up in this spiral because they're poor.
Yep.
We have criminalized poverty in this country, and that's where our poor go.
Yeah, I mean, it's very I've seen cartoons in different various places of kind of playing on the fact of how expensive it is to be poor. And you think about how a $200 speeding ticket affects people of different income levels, and it's going to really only affect the lowest income bracket to the point where they cannot buy food or pay rent or take care of their children. Very serious repercussions for something. And typically those fines are for victimless crimes. So they say, oh, it's only a fine. We're not throwing someone in jail. But eventually, if you cannot pay that fine, you could end up in prison.
Yeah. And then we have a system where, like, a lot of crimes, if you pay off your probation, you don't have to report for things like drug testing. You don't have to report for things like probation officers or any of that.
Right.
If you have the money up front to buy your way out of it, you don't have to do it. And if you don't, you're getting charged interest rates on those.
Yep.
You're getting charged to do your drug testing. It's astronomical.
Yeah.
The amount that we are like, oh, well, you can't afford to drop it all right now. Guess what? It's going to cost you 4 times more, and it's going to fuck up your whole life.
Yep.
It's just this really strange system where we literally try to suck the money out of the poorest.
Right. And it also directly impacts groups of minority groups more so than especially the wealthy for sure, but white folks. I mean, if you look at there's the crack versus cocaine difference in what the sentencing are for one versus the other. There is even just the arrest rates for marijuana. I mean, everyone says marijuana is legal. Marijuana has been legal for white folks for a long time. White people get arrested at like 25% of the rate that black people get arrested, and they do it exactly the same rates. White versus black, smoke weed at the exact same rates. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It has a lot to do with where we're policing too.
Yep.
So we heavily police minority areas, and when we do that, and we majorly pull people over there, and that's because they don't have tags or they don't have, their registrations out of date. Any of these things that are also caused by poverty get extra picked up in those areas because they're policed so heavily.
Right.
And it's purposely done. We know that we are policing that area more.
Right. Yeah, and that skews, there's a lot of people who, you get in online debates or whatever, and people will throw, well, the crime rates are higher in those areas. Crime rates are higher in those areas because we have 20-to-1 police officers in those areas versus the wealthy white communities. It's not that the crime's not happening, it's that we're not policing the same. And I'm not saying put more police officers in places. I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying put far less and have other folks dealing with a lot of the typical, interactions, I guess, with the people.
We need to make sure that poverty is never crime.
Yeah.
That's our biggest thing. If, we've turned most of our policing is done on our roads, and it's literally just ticketing and all of this. That's not helping our country.
Right.
Like that could, if it's people might speed and that's dangerous, we could get road assistants whose job is just to pull people over when they're speeding too much. Right. And give them a warning or something. But you don't need people who have literal weapons on our roads handing out tickets just because people are poor.
Right.
It's insane to me.
Yeah, I mean, even if you look at I lost the so licensing. So occupational licensing, even just to do a range of different trades, it costs not only money to the city or state for your license, but also the training that's required by that city or state. And in reality, I'm sure the people making those laws have been helped out by the people, getting the money for the extra education that's required.
Do you know that most of these careers that we now have to go to like trade schools and stuff for, they used to be paid internships?
Right.
Okay, so that means you didn't pay to learn this stuff. You got paid to learn this stuff.
Right.
And that's a huge difference. But we switched over to these private schools where they can make tons of money. And now you have to have a degree, more or less. You have to have those things. You didn't used to need those things to become even like a plumber or an electrician. You worked under someone and learned.
Yeah. Yeah, paid apprenticeships where, I mean, my father was a tradesman. He's, a carpenter his whole life. And it's crazy to me that we force people to basically pay, a barrier of entry or a tax or whatever to do the thing that they're passionate about. We want people to go out and be passionate and excited about work and do whatever they want to do as happily, whatever makes them happy. We want people to do and be able to live their lives doing it.
Exactly.
And we can't do that because they now have to pay $10,000 to do so.
And it's so asinine. And honestly, I think education should be free. We live in a democracy, okay? So that means you being educated directly benefits me. Your crotch goblins being educated directly benefits me. So
it's true.
If we have a bunch of dumb people who can't afford to go to college, that means we're gonna have a bunch of dumb laws. So like,
and I think too,
people's education is good.
Yeah, and I think, education might mean different things for different people too. I think there's, going into a trade, I think is, and if you look, even, I mean, it's not really that far. It's probably 30-ish years ago that going into a trade was basically just as profitable or whatever as going to a 4-year degree and get, I'm like, 8-year doctors and lawyers and stuff like that. Sure, they made kind of over the top. But if you're looking at a typical 4-year degree versus going into a trade, you spent about the same amount of time learning what you wanted to learn, and you ended up kind of making same or more in some cases doing the trade. So I think, education should mean different things to different people. I don't want to force everyone to going to, 12 years of school or 16 years of school instead of 12 years or anything like that. I think there's different definitions of that. But I think, having people, like you said, having an educated population is going to help the population when we're all voting for the same thing.
And we have so when we talk about our rights, I think one of our basic rights should be making sure that our children are educated to at least a comparable level to other first world countries. We have gotten to the point where our education system is so underfunded, the teachers have to buy the supplies for the classrooms.
My wife's a public school teacher. That's why I giggle. So I know this very well.
It's so astronomically stupid. Like, we don't even have other countries, they learn multiple languages in the first grade. We are behind the bell curve and everybody seems to be okay with it, but wants to dump more money into making sure police officers have, grenade launchers. Yeah. And that's not an exaggeration. There are some police officers who have grenade launchers.
And tanks. I mean, we are. So I just saw a kind of a bar graph, and I looked into kind of the data behind it, and it's real. The United States, just the police force, if you took out every single military branch and just looked at the police force, we would be the 3rd largest military in the world.
Yep.
Just the police. Just how much money we spend on the police. That is insane. Like that just blows my mind that we are spending the same or more than most of the other countries that have adequate defense on our police force that are supposedly supposed to be protecting people in our country.
Right. And then what are we actually getting out of it?
Right.
We don't really what are these police officers really doing on a daily basis that makes the amount of money that we put into them worth it? Pulling people over for speeding is not worth it. Putting the money into our transportation system, into our education system. We are so far behind in our infrastructure that some of our dams are falling apart. But we have the 4 biggest armies in the world. That's right. Ridiculous.
Yeah. And I am typically not one for a ton, and this is where you and I probably differ a little bit, but it's okay. Like, I'm not for just taking hardworking people's money more and putting it back. But if we're already doing this and if we have a slate and we're allocating money, I don't want as much money going to the police force as to other pieces of things that are actually going to help people who need it.
There are certain things that we're always going to need. We're always going to need to make sure we have education and we have, social security, those kinds of things. But it's the main part is, do you know how much it would cost to end homelessness in the United States?
Yeah, that's a huge one. It's not as much as people would think, and it's like a fraction of the police budget.
It's $33 billion to end homelessness in the entire country. That's how much it would cost. Last year, we spent $738 billion on our military budget.
Yep.
What?
Yeah. And even, you know, if you just go and look at the number of houses available, like I think there's something like a 15% overage of houses in the entire country, and less than 15% of the population is homeless. There is definitely ways, and this is where I think, you know, communities can help step in and do some of this work. I think, you know, communities can recognize this, and hopefully, and I would much rather see a voluntary system of folks, you know, just putting forth their effort and money to do so. If it has to be done on the money that's already being taken from taxes and it's just being reallocated from police to homeless individuals, I am very for that as well. But again, I'd rather see the voluntary group of the community doing it. And I think that's, you know, it's at the end of the day, we're just like splitting hairs, you know. As long as it gets done and we're helping people, that's all I really care about.
Right. No, I think that a majority of our taxes should come from more of our production and those kinds of things. So I think that we have way more of our tax burden on our middle class than we do on our top earners or our top corporations even. So the majority of our tax burden should be coming from those sources, and instead it's coming from us, which is not okay.
Yeah, and even just trying to make the tax code a lot simpler would be easy. I mean, if we just like, they keep adding pages to what we have to do for taxes, and it's like, if you look, TurboTax and H&R Block and all, they're paying to do that. They're lobbying to do that. Like,
I was gonna say, in other countries, you literally just get told, they send you a thing and they're like, we think this is how much we owe you. Can you make sure this is right? And you send it back and you say it's right. You don't have to pay people. You don't have to put all this extra effort into it. And we actually had a bill that was here to do the same thing. But like you said, TurboTax and H&R Block, big corporations, big money, said, no, we're not going to make things easier for Americans. We need to make sure we can still take money from them. Yeah. And so instead of having representation in the Congress that stood for us Americans, who were like, no, why would we continue to do that? They went, oh, they're going to make sure we're getting money, so we're going to vote to make sure that, you know, we don't get that easy access. And that's all it comes down to. And you can see that with every single step when it comes to worker benefits, when it comes to everything. There is a big money interest in it that doesn't want it to happen.
Yeah, and oftentimes actually writing the laws, like if you look at a lot of the lobbyist firms in Washington, they're writing the bills, and then the senator just basically signs their name. I mean, I'm sure they have someone read over it, but at the end of the day, they have someone writing these bills that are from, you know, that are directly benefiting from. And that's why, you know, I think, you know, if we're going to get into a better society, we can just kind of further reduce the number of laws we have on the books on a ton of different things. I mean, if we just go after victimless crimes, you know, day one, and that's what we go after first, and take away a lot of that, I think we get into a better place really quickly, and then we can kind of chip away at other things as we need to.
And there's so many here, especially when it comes to like drugs. Like, drugs should never have been a legal issue. If anything ever, it should be a mental health issue. Yep. And that's literally it. There should never have been a point where we're like, people need to go to prison because they put things in their own fucking body. That's stupid. We can say it's not good that they're doing that. They're doing it excessively. Maybe we should try and help them if they want help. Right. But you can't, like, it's so ridiculous to me that we're like, oh, you use a narcotic because, first off, these people are usually very poor, in bad situations, homeless. Oh, you're using these things, now you're going to prison. And it's astronomical to me.
Yeah, and if you look at it, like, it's a lot of those laws are put in place for very racist reasons originally, and then they just kind of spiral out of control where we're trying to regulate morality. You know, what one person's opinion of what's moral and what's not shouldn't be the law to put someone in jail. You know what I mean? The repercussions from what someone else doesn't think. I mean, what I think is right and what probably every person around me, include my wife, me and my wife agree on a lot of things. Me and my wife disagree on a lot of laws that should happen or shouldn't happen. What her version of morality is shouldn't be imposed on me or I go to jail. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of folks get caught up in, oh, but this is bad and this could hurt, things if things got worse. But at the end of the day, if the person is making that decision on themselves, they're not hurting their children, they're not hurting other people around them, and they're just doing something that they want to do for themselves. And giving someone help is not a bad thing either. But at the end of the day, you don't force someone to do something that they don't willfully want to do if they're just doing something to themselves and not hurting anybody for it.
Exactly. Now, there's a different case if you're like on drugs and you're not taking care of your children and those kinds of things. That's also different. But that's not what we've had. We've had a lot of, there was a case, and I know this because I recently lived in Alabama, where, there was a disabled veteran, kind of like myself, who has a marijuana card. And I think Texas or somewhere around that area, maybe Arizona or something. And he went to Alabama and he had drugs on him, and he's in court, or last I knew, I think he got a little bit of probation time or something like that he had to do.
Yeah.
It's astronomical to me that somehow still in one part of the country it can be completely legal to smoke marijuana. In another part of the country, they're like, doesn't matter if you have a prescription, you're going to jail.
Yep. And if you look at some of the most unjust laws there, I mean, there are corporations in Massachusetts making tons of money selling marijuana, and there are still people in jail for selling marijuana. I mean, it's wild to think that, and it's just completely unjust to think that, just the decriminalization from here forward is, the only thing that needs to happen. We need to make sure that we're going back and helping and making sure the people who did go to jail for those things are out of jail. Their records are being scrubbed. Like, we make it now not only legal, but profitable to do the things that people are in jail for 50 plus years doing.
Yeah. And that's another thing when we talk about like records being scrubbed and that kind of thing. I don't know why we make it so hard on people who have a record here. Having a felony means pretty much you are fucked for the rest of your life. No matter what you try and do, you're not getting out of it. You're never getting a good job. And it's insanity to me that people can get a felony at 18 and be screwed for the rest of their lives, even if they served their time. That's astronomical. Why do we have this system that literally continues to prey on people and just put them in worse, more vulnerable situations?
Right. And you think, most people say, well, we want people to get out, rejoin society and be, kind of a good working member of society, or whatever they say. That's very, very difficult to do as your rights are being stripped away as soon as you get that felony charge. And even like voter rights, while you're, prison populations are some of the most directly affected people by things that happen in their cities, their states, their country, and that yet we don't give those people a right to vote. I mean, it just...
When you take away people's voice, you give people someone to oppress.
Yeah.
So what we've done is we took away all prisoners' voices, and now the corporations can use them as much as they want to, and there's not a damn thing they can do about it. They can pay them 17 cents an hour and give them more jail time if they refuse to work. Yep. That's slavery.
Yeah, the current, the newly minted Department of Labor, Marty Walsh, he was the mayor of Boston in Massachusetts. He paid, it was far under $1 an hour for prisoners to shovel all of the and clean all of the snow that we had like 3 or 4 years ago, and we had like 8-10 feet of snow in a weekend. I mean, it was, and he he's not the right person for the Department of Labor to at the end of the day. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day.
That reminds me of something that someone said that I think they wanted. I think it's Texas that recently started doing it. They started paying homeless people like $8 an hour to start cleaning. And I'm like, and he's like, well, why don't you want to do that in Michigan? I was like, because my goal isn't to find people who are literally desperate and then use them to work for less than a living wage just because they're desperate. That's exploiting people. That's not helping them. Right. So we really need to work on trying to figure out ways to not exploit all of these people, these Americans that don't deserve it.
Right.
We need to start standing up for each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think there's again, like we've been agreeing, on 90% of the stuff we've been talking about today. I want to tap into a little bit of how you have worked or want to work with other third parties in the future, and kind of some of your ideas. We talked a little bit pre-show, and you had a couple of really great ideas that I want to make sure that my listeners hear about, because they were really cool ideas.
Okay, so I have been working with some of the libertarians here, and I really just want to see us starting to work together, even if it's just throwing. My big one is I want to do a festival of some kind this summer with live music, and where we can actually have an alternative party coalition of some type, where we can set up booths and people can see what these different policies, these different belief systems are, and really get to know these other options. Because right now, the two options that we have are both garbage. And I really wish people would really start to realize it's more of this pinning you against each other than it is actually helping you.
Right.
So we're going to be doing some fun stuff here in Michigan, hopefully this summer, as long as, right now Corona is just getting a little crazy here. So
yeah.
So
yeah.
we're kind of like touching and going on the planning stage right now, but it's really exciting.
Yeah, that's great. I think there's a lot to be said where, we talked a little bit of this before the show, and I've talked about this probably on, half the shows that I've had here so far. We are drastically underfunded compared to the Democrats and Republicans. Joining forces, and not saying that we have to agree on every single thing we have to put up. And I would like to see us put up candidates, but maybe for smaller, like, for sheriff or something like that. I think we agree on criminal justice reform for the most part. And I think it'd be great to bring a joint candidate there. I'm not saying we have to do that day one, just working together. And like you said, making people aware and educating people together. It's saying, hey, there's multiple third parties. Pick one of us that you find that fits your values.
Yes. And then the other idea was to actually start some third party debates,
yep.
which is really exciting to me, because we live in a time frame, especially now with the social media platforms and everything else, that if we did a decent-ish enough broadcast, we could do some really cool stuff where we could actually talk about some really relevant issues here in Michigan, and we can point out our differences a little bit, but we can also like get some engagement, and that's my main goal. Who doesn't like to hear a couple people argue back and forth? I think that's the main reason people like watching the debates in the first place. So let's start some fights.
Yeah. I mean, it's good, healthy discussion. And I think, we had thrown around, I worked on Spike Cohen's campaign. We had thrown around the idea of a forum, and we had some buy-in. We couldn't end up making it happen by the end of it, but we are hoping to make something happen here in the near future of kind of even just a forum where we bring together, the Green Party, Libertarian Party, maybe People's Party, Constitution, whatever other parties that want to come and have an open conversation about places we agree and places we disagree. And not necessarily in the pure debate format, but more bringing together in good faith on like things that we can work together on, and then things that we're just not going to work together on that we think that we can still do. There's I had Spike Cohen on the show a few months ago, and he talked about healthcare reform and being able to do, probably 10 different steps that we could agree on with every other third party. And then at the end of it, we'll figure out who pays for it, because that's what we don't agree on. But at the end of the day, there's so many things that we could work on there that makes it much more affordable for whoever ends up paying for it.
Yes. Yes. And there's a lot of things that we could do to improve the system. And it's honestly, it's just broken right now.
Yeah.
Other countries are laughing at us. What do you mean you can't go to the doctor?
Yeah.
You can't afford to go get your arm looked at? I thought it's in pain. No, I'm going to wait for a few days and see if it works itself out because, copays. But
right. And I mean, that's something that we agree on. Like, we both agree that the system is completely broken, shattered, not even close to where operating as it used to be, as it should be, or anything. And like I said, we really, at the end of the day, we want to make it as affordable to whoever ends up paying for it, and we just disagree about who ends up paying for it at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people focus on that. And yes, it is a very big part. We will have plenty of time to debate this and have some arguments about this. That's great. But before that, we have a lot of ground to make up that we could work together on. Just even getting, there's laws in the books that say there's a certain need of a city. And if you don't have a certificate of need, you cannot open a new doctor's office in that city. So it creates these little micro monopolies of places that you can only go to. And that ends up just driving up the cost. And then, insurance company, even Medicare can't negotiate with pharmaceutical companies for lower costs. They just take whatever they are given and pay that. Different things that just make things way more expensive than it needs to be. And it's not helping out anyone other than these huge multinational corporations.
These massive companies that literally add no value to our health. They do not make us have better health care. They add nothing to our health care. They're just taking from it, mainly money.
And making laws to make themselves more money. They just use that money. I think I saw something like every dollar spent lobbying Congress, this was at a national level, but lobbying Congress from a pharmaceutical company, they were seeing something between, I think it was like 700 and 1,000% profit off of every dollar they spent making laws in Washington. It's great. I mean, we have a system that does that. It's built to do that at this point. Citizens United and all those things that allowed corporations to kind of shoehorn their way into the political system in America.
Yeah, and that's our biggest issue, is that we let corporations just straight up control us. And
we were talking before the show. It's an oligarchy more than it is anything, even a democratic republic, democracy, whatever you want to. We are far away from that. We are much closer to an oligarchy if you look at a model oligarchy.
1,000% are. And there's little fun connectors and stuff, but we are in an oligarchy, and it's getting worse and worse every day, and we need to start fighting for each other again.
Yeah, 100%.
That's all it comes down to.
So we have a little bit of time left. I want to give you the floor and let you talk about kind of anything you want to bring up, you want to promote, you want to talk about the campaign, whatever. I want to kind of give you this last bit to give us some of your, I guess, closing statements and stuff, or anything that you want to talk about here at the end.
All right. I didn't have a speech prepared. Okay, so let's go. No. I am just really excited to be doing this. More than anything, I think that this is the first time in a very long time that people have their eyes open to how shitty it is and how much they're getting screwed. And they're really seeing for the first time too that the red and blue aren't doing anything for them. Neither side is. There's of course a few very hardcore, like, I'm Democrat and I'm Republican people. Don't get me wrong. But I think the majority of people are starting to see it. They're starting to see it. And I think that right now is the best time to be a part of a third party. So if you haven't looked into them yet, look at the different options of third parties in your area. Get a hold of some of the people, meet them, see if there's anything you can get involved in. Because trust me, it's the best time to become a third party member.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's you nailed the point, like that it is such a prime time for people looking for an alternative. And I've recommended people to go to the Green Party, DSA, People's Party. I try and get people in the Libertarian Party, but only if their values fit that. Like if they want to do something, if they're environmentalists and that's their number one concern, and I'm going to push them to the Green Party 99% of the time. I'm going to give them the way that a libertarian would solve those issues for sure, just so that I can hear myself talk. Because obviously I have a podcast. I like to hear myself talk. But at the end of the day, I want them to be in whatever third party fits them the most. And I'd much rather see them there than the Democrats or Republicans.
Exactly. Right. I think that's where we're going to start getting the best. No, I think that's where we're going to start getting the best representation. We start getting more people involved in the parties that actually represent their values. because, you know, at the end of the day, we're all going to have different values. That's going to happen.
Yep.
But the Democrats and Republicans are just taking your values and they're using them against you. So that way you won't vote for anyone but them.
Yep.
And so that's not voting for your values, that's voting against your fears.
Right.
And so we need to start voting for our values again. And that's only going to start happening when you look at third parties.
Yeah.
So
no, that's awesome. Yeah, no, that's perfect. And like I said, sorry for interrupting you there. I wanted to make sure we highlighted that point. It was such a good point. It is. I mean, you look at it. If you just look at it, just take everything you think about, you know, listeners, about Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, take it out of your mind for a second and just look at the pure points that they're running against the establishment. That was their whole, whether you think they did it in earnest or not, that's what both of them really ran on. And that's what they fired up a base about. Yep. And now we've seen the end of this and neither of Bernie.
It's when are we going to get back to open? When are we going to get people back to work? And we'll make federal workers make $15 an hour, which doesn't do anything for most federal workers. We're already making $15 an hour. It's the people who are working at McDonald's that, you know, they're not federal workers. It's right. Ridiculous.
Yeah, there was a lot of promises that ended up being like consolation prizes that ended up really not helping the folks that they, you know, are intended to help or didn't intend to help, or they campaigned on helping, I guess, and they never actually did so. No,
my phone is actually about to die.
Okay. No, I was just about to thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you coming on the show. And
it was really a pleasure to be here.
If you ever need any libertarians to kind of help form the coalitions or stuff, please reach out. I'm sure we'll talk again very soon about plenty of different things. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you. You have a wonderful evening.
You too. Thanks. Destiny Clayton, that was wonderful. We were able to talk a ton about, like I said, a bunch of different things that we both agree on, some things that we disagree on, but it's at the end of the day, there's, you know, the road to get to where we want to be, whether you're part of the Green Party, part of the Libertarian Party, part of the Democratic Socialist, whatever party you, third party you end up wanting to be, we are very far away from our goals. And we do have very similar goals in a lot of instances. You know, drug decriminalization, criminal justice reform, and sex work is pretty much something that most of the third parties that I've at least researched agree on pretty widespread across the board. So reach out to fellow, you know, if you're running especially a campaign in different states, reach out to people in different parties and understand what their things that they want to work on are, and maybe form some of those coalitions so that we can build the education and the get the information out there about the different parties. I really appreciate Destiny from coming on. This was a great show. I'm super happy we were able to talk and discuss about different things that we cared about and could work together on. And I hope you join us next week. Like I said, last episode of the season next week, we have Aaron Hamlin on, Executive Director of the Center for Election Science. He's going to be coming on to talk about approval voting, kind of in contrast to ranked choice voting, because that's where I have some knowledge. And then also taking a look at St. Louis and how approval voting actually shaped some of the election there. So join us next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll have another episode of Post Political Podcast. Thanks, everyone.